10 News at 5 starts right now.
ABC 10 News at 5 starts now.
San Diego County is just hours away from entering the dreaded purple tier, and it appears not everyone is willing to comply with the new restrictions. Good evening, I'm Lindsay Pena.
And I'm Steve Atkinson. Some business owners say that they will defy the latest orders and they will stay open. But as our ABC 10 News reporter Mimi Alcala explains, county leaders say the new restrictions may be the only way to slow the spread of COVID-19 for now.
Where we are now is a situation where we're faced with all bad options.
Come Saturday, many businesses will shut their doors all over again as San Diego deals with a new round of restrictions in the purple tier. The county's public health officer, Dr. Wilma Wooten, recently requested that the state reconsider our tier placement to keep us in the red. Gyms, places of worship, and restaurants will have to move outside in the purple tier, and data shows they were hardly the places where the virus spread the most. But the request was denied.
We're going to continue to work to do everything we can with the state to have an approach that's right.
Supervisor Nathan Fletcher says it's important that every jurisdiction across the county does what it can to reduce the spread of COVID-19.
We have to come together. There are limits on what the county can do as it comes to enforcement. We really need the help of the law enforcement agencies.
But some business owners like Larry McNamer, owner of Major's Diner in Pine Valley, say they just can't afford to close again.
We've done everything possible that we could do. It's really tough when you're having to deal with thinking of what the government's going to do.
El Cajon's mayor Bill Wells says he's heard the struggles of many business owners, some saying keeping their doors open means keeping food on their family's table. And police responding to COVID-19 related complaints won't be a top priority.
A lot of us believe that the government is overreaching in this situation. The county, if this is what the county wants to do, then they're going to have to do the enforcement.
But Fletcher says understanding how serious this pandemic is and coming together to tackle the problem is the only way we will get back to a sense of normalcy.
We've got to quit sending mixed messages. We've got to trust the science. We've got to believe the data. And we've got to take appropriate action.
Mimi Alcala, ABC 10 News.
Some San Diego small business owners do plan to rally outside the county administration building on Monday. They will be calling for the county to take local control over business reopenings. And here are the latest numbers tonight for San Diego County. 620 new cases were reported today. That brings our total to more than 62,000. Just yesterday, a record 661 cases were reported. There were no new deaths reported today, so that number remains at 918.
A passenger has tested positive for coronavirus on one of the first Caribbean cruises to set sail since the pandemic started. The case may push the start of cruising out of San Diego back even further. ABC 10 News reporter Jennifer De La Cruz spoke to a man on board that Caribbean ship now stuck in quarantine.
On its maiden Caribbean voyage since the pandemic, the Sea Dream cruise liner has its first case of COVID-19. Travel writer Gene Sloan for The Points Guy is on that ship, now stuck in his stateroom.
They are going right now cabin to cabin and testing everybody on board.
The ship with 53 passengers and 66 crew set sail from Barbados Saturday. Sloan says everyone got tested before getting on board, and the trip was going well, until the captain made this announcement Wednesday.
A rapid COVID test was performed, and the test is preliminary assumptive positive.
The CDC's no-sail order for ships in the U.S. expired October 30th. New guidance requires cruise lines to demonstrate widespread testing, isolation plans, and mock voyages before being allowed to set sail. The CDC says that process could take several months. A 7-day Holland America cruise is scheduled to leave from San Diego on January 2nd, pending clearance from the CDC. The Port of San Diego tells ABC 10 News with COVID cases on the rise, it is too soon to predict when sailing here will continue. Adding, "We are coordinating with Holland America, Carnival, and Disney on their plans and will do what we can to support our cruise partners and their customers when sailing resumes." During our interview with Sloan Thursday morning, this happened.
No, they're at my door. This could be a scoop. I think I'm about to get tested. I'm going to get tested now, so I better go away.
Sloan says he's tested negative so far, and this trip won't keep him from sailing again.
Cruising can be done in this era. I think it's really unfortunate that this happened on the very first trip because this may be a fluke. The next 10 trips may be fine.
Jennifer De La Cruz, ABC 10 News.
No word yet on how long passengers on the Sea Dream will have to stay in quarantine.
President-elect Joe Biden's top allies on Capitol Hill are fighting for another COVID-19 relief bill. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer are accusing GOP leaders of dragging their feet. They say the Republicans should concede the presidential election and immediately return to negotiations on a $2 trillion relief bill. Top House Republican Kevin McCarthy responded to the accusation, saying that Pelosi is playing politics. Nationwide, the coronavirus situation is getting worse. California just became the second state to top 1 million cases. In Chicago, the mayor is urging people to stay home except for essentials like work or getting groceries. As ABC's Elizabeth Schulze reports, the U.S. is reporting a new daily record of cases.
As the coronavirus rages in all 50 states and new infections top records every day, hospitals across the nation are on the brink.
What we're planning for is if we run out of hospital capacity, and our current surge planning has to include, the potential of having to expand care outside of our standard areas of delivery.
In Michigan, one nurse says she treated a COVID patient in a storage room with the hospital running out of space. Healthcare leaders in the state today sounding the alarm.
Our hospitals are rapidly filling with COVID patients at a very alarming rate.
The COVID Tracking Project reporting more than 65,000 Americans are currently hospitalized from the virus, an all-time high. Deaths are rapidly increasing too. On average, 1,000 Americans are dying from COVID-19 every 24 hours. Dr. Anthony Fauci says the numbers should be a sobering reminder to Americans not to give in to COVID fatigue and to follow guidelines like wearing masks and distancing.
We're in a difficult situation and we've just got to keep pushing.
Across the country, city and state officials now calling for new restrictions to try to curb the virus. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio saying the city is prepared to close schools and revert to online learning exclusively if positivity rates continue to tick higher.
And here in the nation's capital, the coronavirus is continuing to spread among President Trump's inner circle. Trump advisor Corey Lewandowski, a member of the RNC and a Republican strategist, are the latest people to test positive for COVID-19, bringing the total number of people in the president's orbit to at least 15. Elizabeth Schulze, ABC News, Washington.
Federal health officials have made a deal with pharmacies to distribute free coronavirus vaccines once they are approved. Today's agreement with major chain drugstores and grocery market pharmacies covers about 60% of pharmacies in all 50 states and U.S. territories. Earlier this year, Pfizer announced that its vaccine trials have shown more than a 90% effectiveness. The general public is expected to have access to a coronavirus vaccine, at least by next spring, after priority groups such as healthcare workers and the elderly are serviced first. And you can keep up with the very latest news on the coronavirus by downloading our free mobile app. Just go to the App Store and search 10 News. A sex offender will be moving into Jacumba Hot Springs next month. Deputies went door to door to inform residents of Joseph Bollock's release set for next December 1st. He will be put into a home along Old Highway 80 under the supervision of Liberty Health Care. Bollock served time in prison for molesting children between 1976 and 2000. The Department of State, Hospitals, and the San Diego Superior Court chose Jacumba Hot Springs for his release.
President-elect Joe Biden will spend the next few days at his vacation home in Delaware as he continues preparing to take power in January. Meantime, as ABC's Rena Roy reports, President Trump and his administration are still refusing to admit he lost.
Joe Biden making his first big decision as president-elect, tapping longtime advisor Ron Klain to be his chief of staff. In a statement saying his deep, varied experience and capacity to work with people all across the political spectrum is precisely what I need as we confront this moment of crisis and bring our country together again. Klain was Biden's chief of staff when he was vice president. He also has experience dealing with highly infectious diseases like COVID-19 after leading the Obama administration's response to the Ebola virus.
Fighting any epidemic involves science first and foremost, but not science only. It also involves logistics and transportation. It involves planning. It involves managing people.
Meantime, President Trump still falsely claiming the election was rigged in a series of tweets, though he has not spoken publicly in a week. Kayleigh McEnany on Fox News Today.
That all laws are being followed with regard to an expected transition, though we expect to continue on as the Trump administration. We will see how our litigation goes.
Senator Chuck Schumer on Capitol Hill speaking out against the president and his supporters.
The election's not in doubt. This is nothing more than a temper tantrum by Republicans.
But there does appear to be cracks in the GOP's defense of Trump. Senior GOP Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa and Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma, both stating Biden should be receiving classified briefings.
That's now stopped for Joe Biden. I think we should continue that because we still don't know who the president's going to be at this point.
But the House Republican leader is still casting doubt on whether Biden actually won.
I'll trust the intel community. He's not president right now. Don't know if he'll be president January 20th, but whoever is, will get the information.
While many Republicans continue to ignore the reality that Joe Biden is in fact president-elect, the Vatican is not. Pope Francis calling Biden to congratulate him as he prepares to become America's second ever Roman Catholic president. Rena Roy, ABC News, Wilmington, Delaware.
Joel Anderson is continuing to extend his lead in the close race for the District 2 supervisor seat. Yesterday, he led Steve Voss by 85 votes, but after today's count, it's up to 135. Both candidates are Republicans, so this race will not impact the balance of power on the board. The next update will be tomorrow after 5. As states continue to count votes, one thing is clear: the pre-election polls were off. Pollsters underestimated support for President Trump by a wide margin, even more than they did in 2016. ABC 10 News anchor Derek Stahl is going in depth to explain what went wrong.
Heading into Election Day 2020, Joe Biden led Donald Trump by an average of 8.4% in the national polls. We won't know until all the votes are counted, but it looks like Trump's support nationally was underestimated by about 3.5% or more. That's wider than the miss in 2016, when the national polls underestimated Trump's support by 1.1%.
Polling emerged from 2016 with a black eye. This is fair to say a second black eye in 2020.
Jay Levy is with the polling firm Survey USA. He says the industry thought it had corrected its mistakes from 2016.
In 2016, we know, for example, that pollsters didn't necessarily weight by education in order to make themselves or their samples representative. And so they fixed that.
But state polls show those fixes didn't work. In Ohio, there was a nearly 8-point miss. In Wisconsin, a nearly 10-point miss. And in Florida, the polls missed by 5 and incorrectly showed Joe Biden in the lead.
While pollsters attempted to correct for the mistakes that they made in 2016, President Trump was busy hammering home a narrative that, number one, the media is the enemy of the people, and number two, polls are fake polls.
That lack of trust, he says, likely caused Trump supporters to ignore pollsters at a greater rate across the board, meaning they were often undercounted in surveys. San Diego State political scientist Dr. Stephen Goggins says there are other theories as well.
Between mail-in balloting, the pandemic, between kind of all the early voting, and a lot of the confusion in different ways, it's possible some of that played a role in kind of creating the error we saw this time.
He says the pandemic may have made the models used to predict voter turnout less accurate this cycle. There's also some early data showing once the pandemic hit, Democrats started responding to surveys more frequently, something that could have shifted the poll numbers. There also may have been issues polling certain demographic groups like seniors and Latinos that underestimated Trump's support.
Many of these errors are fixable, right, when they find out kind of what exactly went wrong. And you can still get kind of high quality samples.
Pollsters are planning to do detailed autopsies on the election once they have final turnout data and results by precinct.
Only once we get to a point in the future where everyone's voice can be included equally will polling right itself, and then it may be much more accurate than it ever was in the past.
Levy says there's plenty of reason for optimism because cell phones and new technology allow for faster polling results than ever before once they calibrate out a few kinks. Derek Stahl, ABC 10 News.
ABC 10 News used Survey USA to poll 11 state and local races this election cycle. The final polls accurately predicted the winner every time, although the margins weren't perfect. Our poll actually overestimated Donald Trump's support in California by about 4 points.
Interesting. A pilot was killed today after coming in short on an LA County runway, crashing into several cars on a neighborhood street. When crews arrived at the scene just outside the White Man Airport runway, several cars were fully engulfed near homes. Despite early reports, no homes were damaged. There were no other injuries as well. The pilot was the only person on board. The FAA and the NTSB are looking into the cause of the crash.